The idea behind Telesma comes from ancient Greek ritual language and later appears in Hermetic and magical traditions through the practice of making talismans. The Greek word telesma refers to something that has been completed through a rite or brought into a finished operative state. Over time, this idea actually evolved into the concept of the talisman, a physical object prepared to carry a specific function or influence. In this framework, an object doesn't act because it symbolizes something, it acts because it's been deliberately altered through ritual action, timing, and repeated focus. Preparation followed a structured sequence. The object was first separated from ordinary use through cleansing or isolation. It was then assigned a purpose through spoken formulas, gestures, symbols, and repetition. Finally, the object was stabilized so the assigned function would persist rather than dissipate. What mattered here was not the belief alone, but the process. The object was treated as incomplete until the rite was finished. Once completed, it was considered active. Talismans were therefore understood as tools that held directed intention in a fixed form. Their effectiveness depended on precision, consistency, and maintenance, not on spontaneous emotion or abstract faith. Odic Force was a theory proposed in the mid-19th century as an attempt to explain life, sensation, and subtle perception through a single universal energy. It was introduced as a natural force, not a spiritual metaphor, and was meant to operate alongside known physical forces like magnetism and electricity. The theory claimed that living beings, magnets, crystals, and even celestial bodies emitted a form of radiation that could be sensed directly by certain individuals. According to the proposal, this radiation produced sensations of warmth, cold, pressure, or light, depending on polarity and condition. Reports of colored, glowing, and flowing patterns were taken as evidence of this force in action. However, these observations relied entirely on subjective testimony. No experimental method was able to produce consistent, repeatable results under controlled conditions. As scientific standards tightened, the theory failed verification and was abandoned. Odic Force is now classified as a vitalist hypothesis that couldn't be substantiated, rather than a legitimate physical or biological field. Its historical importance lies not in its accuracy per se, but in what it represents, an early attempt to reconcile human sensory experience, life processes, and natural forces before modern physiology and psychology provided alternative explanations. Pneuma was an ancient Greek and Roman concept describing the active force that animates living bodies and gives them function. It was not simply air or breath, even though breath was its visible carrier. Pneuma refers to the invisible power that enters the body with breathing and organizes movement, sensation, thought, and emotion. Without pneuma, a body was considered just inert matter. Ancient physicians and philosophers divided pneuma into levels of function. One form governed basic vitality, controlling growth, warmth, and physical coordination. Another form governed sensation and emotion, allowing perception, impulse, and reaction. A higher form yet governed reason and judgment, making deliberate thought possible. These weren't separate substances, but different expressions of the same force operating at different intensities and locations within the body. Pneuma was believed to circulate through blood vessels and nerves, carrying both life and information. Health depended on its smooth distribution throughout the body. When pneuma became stagnant, overheated, weakened, or blocked, illness appeared. Any sort of treatments focused on restoring its proper movement through breathing exercises, posture, diet, and environmental regulation rather than attacking the disease directly. In this system, breath controlled life because breath controlled pneuma, and pneuma controlled the structure and behavior of the body. Mana is a concept from Polynesian and Melanesian cultures describing spiritual power as a transferable and measurable force. This wasn't an abstract belief or symbolic authority either. Mana was treated as something that could increase, decrease, accumulate, or be lost depending on actions, lineage, and circumstances. Everything in the world was believed to possess mana to some degree, but not in equal amounts. In this framework, Mana explained why certain people commanded respect, why some places felt dangerous or sacred, and why particular objects were treated as powerful. Chiefs, warriors, and ritual specialists were believed to hold high concentrations of mana because of their ancestry, achievements, and correct behavior. Success in battle, leadership, or healing was interpreted as evidence that mana was flowing strongly through a person. Failure, illness, or disgrace indicated weakened or disrupted mana. Mana was governed by pretty strict rules. Improper contact, broken taboos, or moral violations could drain or contaminate it. This is why ritual cleanliness, social hierarchy, and precise conduct were essential. Mana was not controlled through belief alone, it was managed through discipline, restraint, and alignment with cosmic and social order. Power was therefore inseparable from responsibility because misusing mana endangered both the individual and the community. Hamingja is a concept from Old Norse belief describing a transferable force of luck, strength, and success that follows a person through life. It wasn't random chance and not purely personal effort either. Hamingja was treated as an energetic endowment, often inherited from ancestors and reinforced through action. A person didn't simply have skills, they carried Hamingja that made those skills effective. This force was believed to influence outcomes directly too. Victory in battle, success in leadership, and survival in dangerous situations were interpreted as signs of strong Hamingja. Failure or repeated misfortune suggested that the force had weakened, withdrawn, or been misaligned. Hamingja could attach itself to families, bloodlines, or even rulers, which is why lineage mattered deeply in Norse society. Hamingja was not permanent either. It could be strengthened through honorable behavior, courage, or loyalty, or diminished through cowardice, oath-breaking, and social dishonor. In some stories, Hamingja could even leave one person and attach to another, especially when power transferred between leaders. This made fate an energetic condition rather than a fixed destiny. Life unfolded according to how well a person carried, preserved, and aligned with the force they inherited. Ka is an ancient Egyptian concept describing a non-physical duplicate of a person that carries their vital force. It wasn't the soul, and it wasn't the personality. Ka functioned as the energy that allowed a person to live, separate from consciousness or moral identity. A human being was understood as incomplete without it. The Ka was believed to come into existence at birth and remain linked to the physical body throughout life. It required constant nourishment, not symbolically but energetically. Food, drink, incense, and ritual offerings were provided to sustain the Ka, especially after death. This is why tombs were stacked with provisions and why offering rituals continued for generations. The Ka was expected to consume the essence of these offerings rather than their physical substance. After death, the Ka didn't automatically survive either. If it was neglected, starved, or disconnected from ritual care, it weakened and eventually dissolved. Preservation of the body, repetition of the person's name, and maintenance of offerings were all methods used to stabilize the Ka's energy. In this system, immortality was not guaranteed by belief or morality. It depended on whether the Ka could remain energetically supported and anchored in the world. Baraka is a concept from Islamic mystical traditions describing a transmissible spiritual potency that accumulates through proximity, conduct, and lineage. It's not belief-based and not symbolic. Baraka was understood as a real force that flows from divine origin into the world, concentrating in certain people, places, actions, and objects. Baraka was believed to gather around individuals who lived in sustained alignment with divine order, particularly saints, scholars, and ascetics. Their words, gestures, and even physical remains were thought to carry this energy. A location associated with such a person could retain Baraka long after their death, which is why shrines, tombs, and pilgrimage sites became centers of perceived power. Contact with these sites wasn't devotional alone, it was treated as energetic exposure. Baraka could be transmitted through touch, shared space, instruction, or blessing, but it could also be diminished through moral disorder or misuse. Unlike personal vitality, Baraka wasn't generated internally, it was received and retained. Maintaining it required discipline, humility, and correct behavior. In this system, spiritual authority didn't come from institutional position or doctrine, but from the visible effects of Baraka operating through a person's presence and actions. Orenda is a concept from several Native American traditions describing the energy of a being's capacity to affect the world. It's not emotion, belief, or intention alone either. Orenda refers to the active power behind the action, the force that allows a person, animal, storm, or spirit to impose change. Everything that exists was believed to possess Orenda, but in different strengths and forms. Orenda was understood as competitive and dynamic. When two forces met, such as a hunter and prey, a healer and illness, or a tribe and a natural disaster, the outcome depended on whose Orenda was stronger, better directed, or better sustained. Success wasn't interpreted as luck or divine favor alone, but as evidence that one's Orenda had prevailed. Failure indicated that the force had been overmatched, depleted, or misaligned. Orenda could be cultivated through endurance, discipline, ritual preparation, and lived experience. It was also shaped by emotion and focus. Fear weakened it, while confidence and clarity strengthened it. Because Orenda directly influenced results, it carried ethical weight too. Misusing it disrupted balance and invited resistance from opposing forces. In this system, power was neither abstract nor moralized by doctrine, it was measured by its effect, and reality itself was understood as the outcome of interacting fields of will. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Remember to like and subscribe, and hey, check out the next video on screen. It's just as unbelievable and cool as this one.